Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Alisa Sladzinska, and I work for the City of Chicago Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, BACP. Welcome to the BACP Business Education Workshop Webinar Series. We have adapted our regular business education workshops at City Hall into these webinars until further notice. On behalf of Rosa Escarino, I want to inform you that business licenses can be processed online where applicable by visiting chicagobusinessdirect.org. And as I go through the information, please note I will provide all emails and websites in the chat box so you can reference them there. If you are part of the Business Start Certificate program, you will get credit for joining this webinar by sending an email to bacpoutreach@cityofchicago.org. If you want to learn more about the program, please visit chicago.gov/business-workshops. The City of Chicago will be entering Phase 4, gradually resume part of the city's Be Safe Chicago framework on Friday, June 26th. To help guide your business and employees during Phase 4 of Chicago's reopening process, please visit chicago.gov/reopening for industry-specific guidelines. Also, BACP and the City of Chicago's Office of Emergency Management and Communications created Shy Biz Emergency Alerts. You can opt in to receive targeted emergency alerts for the business community. If you are interested, please visit chicago.gov/ShyBizAlerts. These are alerts to businesses in targeted areas for severe weather, fire, medical emergency, or public safety disturbances that may impact business operations. And so today's webinar will be COVID-19 Relief for Small Businesses, presented by the Small Business Administration, Illinois District. And as we go through the presentation, please use the chat box on the right to ask your questions. We will hold a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. Please make sure that you are asking questions to all panelists so the panelists and the host can see your questions. And with that, I pass it over to you, Jessica.
Thank you. Hey everyone, good morning. I'll go ahead and share my screen here. Is that looking good? Is that coming up?
Yes, you're perfect. Yep.
Great, thank you. My name is Jessica Maley. I'm the Public Affairs Specialist for the SBA's Illinois District Office. We've done a couple of these webinars with BACP, and you all might have been on a couple of our own webinars, but I just thought this would be a great opportunity for us to walk through the programs one more time, as well as share in the presentation. The deadline for PPP is approaching next week. So I just want to make sure if anybody hasn't applied yet, you guys do it and you have all the information you need. And we will do a Q&A at the end to walk through any questions we don't address in the presentation. Let's dive in. So yeah, we're going to walk through these 4 programs today. The Paycheck Protection Program, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan and Idle Advance programs, our SBA debt relief, and then our Express Bridge loans as well. Here's an update on where we are with PPP. As you are probably aware, there were 2 rounds of funding. The first round went very fast, and the second round, we've definitely seen that the average loan amounts are smaller, and the money has just lasted longer. We haven't run out yet. Again, I just want to encourage you to apply if you haven't yet. $659 billion total in both rounds. And then our latest update for Illinois, you'll see at the bottom, we've distributed more than 193,000 loans worth more than $22 billion. You see some of our top lenders there. But I just want to emphasize we have more than 5,000 lenders across the country. They're not all, you don't have to go to a big bank. Small community lenders are also giving out these loans. And then some fintechs as well, such as PayPal, Square, and Cabbage. There's some online options. So even if you don't have strong pre-existing banking relationships in your small business, there's still opportunities for you to reach out to a lender and access a PPP in this last week. Here's an overview of what the Paycheck Protection Program loan does. So the loan can be worth up to $10 million. It's determined by your average monthly payroll from last year. If it's not forgiven, and we'll discuss how it could be forgiven, it becomes a 5-year loan at 1% interest. Now, that changed with the PPP Flexibility Act. So if you already had an earlier 2-year loan, that still is a 2-year loan. You can talk to your lender about changing it to a 5-year loan, but the 5-year term is only for new loans since the PPP Flexibility Act has passed. And your lender should walk through this with you. You should be aware of whether the loan you're signing for is a 5-year or a 2-year loan. And there's a couple different ways to calculate the total loan amount. We'll talk a bit about the costs that go into that consideration, but there's a really helpful PDF on our website and Treasury's website called How to Calculate Loan Amounts that walks through some very specific scenarios, especially for sole proprietors and independent contractors. Now, if you spend at least 60% of your loan on payroll, the entire loan is forgivable. You have 24 weeks to do that. So after you get the loan, the clock starts ticking. You have 24 weeks from then to spend the money. If 60% of the money is spent on payroll, and we'll talk a bit about what payroll constitutes, then the entire loan would be forgiven. Those two figures have also changed. So at the beginning of this process, we said you had to spend 75% of your loan on payroll and you had 8 weeks to spend it. That has changed. And this change applies to both existing loan people who already have their loans and new applicants. So if you already spent your money with 75% going towards payroll and 8 weeks of time has elapsed, that's fine. These changes are just meant to give more flexibility, and we'll talk a bit about that process. Who's eligible? Any small business or nonprofit, 501c3 or 501c19 with fewer than 500 employees. Sole proprietors, independent contractors, and the self-employed are also eligible. Yeah, these are some of those changes that I just mentioned, but these new loans, since the PPP Flexibility Act passed, the terms were extended to 5 years. You have the option to negotiate if you were on that 2-year term from the beginning to 5 years. The covered period is 24 weeks. If you were in that first tranche of loan recipients who had 8 weeks, you can choose an 8-week or a 24-week period, whatever works better for you. The goal is just to get you to whatever helps you get to forgiveness, basically. And then the ratio of payroll costs changed to 60-40. So if, again, that's a minimum of 60%. You don't have to hit some magic number where it's exactly 60% on payroll. If you spend 60% on payroll, you spend 75% on payroll, you spend 100% on payroll, that's fine. You would be eligible for forgiveness. It's a minimum. And then another factor that affects your forgiveness calculation is if you had any reduction in your full-time employment costs. But we put some safe harbor regulations in, which we'll discuss. Basically, if your business is not able to operate at capacity due to health regulations, or if you weren't able to rehire your employees for certain reasons, those circumstances could basically, you still could qualify for forgiveness, even if those circumstances were applicable. The deferral period has also been extended. So you have 10 months from the end of your covered period, basically that 24 weeks, to request forgiveness. The covered period extends to December 31 at the end of this year, but you can request forgiveness at any time after your loan is dispersed and the funds have been spent appropriately. 6/30/20, that is next Tuesday. That's the last date a loan can be approved. And I just want to make that clear that means that the lender has to send it to SBA for approval on that date. So I'm not going to say that doesn't mean a lender can't make a loan on Tuesday and get it in time, but just so you know, it's not just you making the application to the lender by that date. It's the lender has to be able to submit it to the SBA by that date. So don't wait if you haven't applied yet. And then a note that we'll discuss here too, partial forgiveness is available. Some people are worried it's kind of an all or nothing thing. If you don't hit that 60%, you won't qualify for 100% forgiveness, but you will qualify for some forgiveness, assuming the funds were spent appropriately. Here's what the application process generally looks like. There is a form. Again, this is linked both on our website and the Treasury website. Some banks also have their own loan application forms. So kind of talk to the lender that you're applying with about what information they need from you and in what format. The loan is generally based on your payroll expenses from the previous year. So a lot of other loans, for instance, our disaster loans that we'll talk about, it's based on your personal credit worthiness. That's a factor. That's not a factor in the PPP program. We're just looking at what you spent on payroll, and that determines how much we're giving you or how much of a loan you're getting. And again, that how to calculate loan amounts PDF on both of our websites is very helpful in kind of figuring out how do you know the max amount that you can receive. What qualifies as payroll costs? It's not just cash compensation. It's also, benefits such as vacation, parental, family, medical, sick leave, healthcare coverage benefits, premiums, retirement, and then payment of state and local taxes. All of that qualifies as payroll costs when determining how much of a loan you're going to get. What does not qualify as payroll costs? Pay to 1099 independent contractors. So I want to make this very clear. If you are an employer and you have a business and you pay your employees as 1099 independent contractors, that's not an eligible use of funds, both in calculating your eligible loan amount and in spending the money. The reason for that is that 1099 independent contractors can apply for their own PPP loan to replace their lost wages. So it doesn't make sense that an employer can receive a loan to pay 1099 contractors, and then 1099 contractors can also receive a loan to replace those wages. We just had to make a decision, and that was the way that the law was written, that 1099 contractors can apply for their own PPP loan, but employers do not include pay to 1099 contractors in their loan calculation. These other things listed here are eligible uses of funds, but again, they do not qualify as payroll costs when you're calculating that loan amount: rent, mortgages, interest, utilities, etc. This question we get a lot: how do I check on the progress of my PPP application? What is the status? When am I getting it? We can't see into that process necessarily. That you need to work with your lender, because they are the ones who will get the approval and then fund the loan. Let's say you hit your 8 weeks or your 24 weeks or some time in between. You've spent your funds appropriately, and now you would like to seek forgiveness. There is a loan forgiveness application. We'll talk a bit about what that looks like. It's available again on the SBA website and the Treasury website. When you fill that out, you submit it to the lender that you applied with that gave you the loan. The lender has up to 60 days to submit their decision to the SBA. So the lender looks over everything. If they agree with you that the funds were spent appropriately and you qualify for forgiveness, they submit it to the SBA, and then SBA has up to 90 days. Got the hiccups. SBA has up to 90 days to remit forgiveness to the lender. So just a little bit about what that time process can look like. Obviously, we're still in the very early stages of the forgiveness part of this program, so we are still kind of waiting to see how this process runs. But I just want to let everyone know not to expect the whole forgiveness thing to be done in a week, because the lender has 2 months and then SBA has 3 months to make those decisions. Whatever is not forgiven must be repaid before the loan maturity date. So I want to go back to some of those, how to spend the money appropriately to qualify for forgiveness. And again, you have eligible payroll costs and eligible non-payroll costs. You want to try and spend 60% of the loan on those eligible payroll costs, and then the whole loan, 100%, would be forgiven. And again, we discussed these. It's not just that the money that is paid directly, it's also the money you spend on benefits, retirement, insurance premiums, state and local taxes. Now, we know you have some of those non-payroll costs: rent, mortgage, interest, utilities. Those are eligible uses of funds, but those need to be 40% or less in order for the loan to qualify for forgiveness. Not eligible for forgiveness, again, those 1099 independent contractor payments. So what documents do you need to apply for forgiveness? There's 2 forms that are on our website right now. One is a 3508 and then one is our 3508 Easy, which is like a shortened version. Not everyone can use the Easy, so you have to read the instructions clearly and see if your situation would allow you to. I'm not going to read through all of this, but basically, if you're self-employed or you're a borrower that did not reduce your wages or reduce your number of employees, or you did not reduce your wages, but you were not able to operate during the covered period at the same level due to the health regulations. Basically, you did reduce your employees or paid hours, but you were permitted to under that safe harbor guideline. Those are some of the use cases that would allow you to use the Easy, which is a shortened version of the form. But again, those instructions, there are separate documents that are just instructions for both of the forgiveness applications. So you can read through those instructions and see which is the better form for you to use. What are some of the documents you'll need to provide? Basically, you want to be able to prove how you spent the money and that it was an appropriate use of funds. So for the payroll, we're talking about our bank account statements, our tax forms, payment receipts, canceled checks. Thinking about the covered period, basically payroll costs that were both incurred and paid during the covered period, incurred or paid, I should say, during the covered period are eligible. And we'll talk a bit more about that in a second. But you also want to demonstrate that you maintained your level of full-time employment. So your tax forms, your state quarterly business and individual employee wage and unemployment insurance filings. You just want to have the backup receipts to show how you were spending the money and who you were spending it on. You'll want to have documentation for your non-payroll costs as well, if that's how you're spending the money, your business mortgage interest payments, your rent or lease payments, your utility payments. And then just some notes about your keeping records. All documents must be retained for a period of 6 years, even after the loan is forgiven, sorry. And then if you say you had employees that you let go and you tried to rehire them and they did not want to come back for any reason, you should document that in writing, because if you're not able to fill that position, you still might be eligible to receive forgiveness, even though you have a lower head count, but you need to document those attempts to rehire people. And like we say here, firings for cause, voluntary resignations, if people make written requests for work schedule reductions, all of those things you want to have well documented. So here are some issues to think about around forgiveness: that salary hourly wage reduction. So if you have more than a 25% reduction in the amount that you're paying the employees, that could result in a forgiveness reduction. The safe harbor application in that case is that you return that salary or the wage to your February 15th level by either when you submit the application or December 31, whichever is earlier. But the idea here is that you might have to reduce your salary and hourly wage. We understand that, but we're giving you that chance to try and bring it back up by the time you apply for forgiveness. Same with your head count. If you have fewer employees when you apply for forgiveness than you did when you sought the loan, then that will contribute to a reduction in the forgiveness amount. The safe harbor guidelines in that case would be, again, like I said, you're unable to operate at normal levels due to HHS or CDC regulations, or you're able to restore back to those February 15th levels by December 31. So if you have to lay people off, if you have to put people on furlough, the goal is to get them back before you apply for forgiveness. And yeah, as I said, it's not all or nothing. You kind of see when you fill out those 2 applications, it's kind of a worksheet that you walk through, and it kind of lets you know what your forgiveness total is going to be if you have some of those situations. Okay, so I'm just going to move on here. We will be able to take questions about the PPP when we get to the Q&A at the end, but I do want to talk about our Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program and the Idle Advance. This was the first program that started in March to help small business owners that were impacted by COVID-19. There was a period where the loan application portal was not accepting new applications, except from agricultural businesses, but that has been turned back on. So we are now accepting new applications from all eligible businesses and nonprofits. If you have not applied yet, you can apply now. If you already applied, your application is still being processed. So I don't want you to think that you need to reapply if you have not gotten an answer yet. We'll talk about how to check on the status of your application. But this is for people who never applied for the EIDLE program and they are interested in it. You can apply now. This is a working capital loan program. The interest rates are low, 3.75% for small businesses, 2.75% for nonprofit. It's a 30-year loan, so you have a long time to pay it off. This is a working capital loan program, so the idea being any bills or expenses that you would have been able to pay were it not for this disaster that has struck, those are things that you could use the funds for. So that might be payroll, that might be rent, payments on other debt or fixed assets that you have. It's not meant to use the funds to refinance other, like a mortgage or situations like that. That's not the purpose of it. It's more just to keep the business running type of a loan. The EIDLE Advance was included in the CARES Act. So this was rapid economic relief. Small businesses were eligible for a payment of up to $10,000 based on the number of employees you have. So not everybody gets $10,000. It's a forgivable loan grant dispersed within days of the complete application. So although you apply for the EIDLE Advance at the same time that you would be applying for the EIDLE loan, I just want to make clear what the differences in these programs are. The EIDLE Advance, it does not have to be repaid whether or not you receive or accept the EIDLE loan. The EIDLE loan does have to be repaid. It's not a grant and it's not forgivable like the PPP. The EIDLE loan is a regular loan that you're signing on to repay. The EIDLE Advance, this grant that just comes into your account upon application, that's separate, and you do not have to accept the EIDLE loan to receive it. Another note I will say, the EIDLE Advance may impact your PPP forgiveness. When you're applying for PPP forgiveness at the end, if you had received an EIDLE Advance at the beginning, like right now, that total that you received from the advance would be reduced, or your forgiveness total for the PPP would be reduced by the amount of your EIDLE Advance. So I just want to let people know those programs do interact, although you apply for them separately. Who's eligible? Again, small businesses with fewer than 500 employees, most private nonprofits, and you had to have been in business as of January 31, and you have to have experienced a substantial impact due to COVID-19. I want to walk through these other programs real quick. I just want to make sure you guys know that they're still out there. These are basically our traditional loan products, the SBA 7A loan, the SBA 504 loan. Like the PPP, these loans you receive through a private lender. The SBA provides a guarantee on them. So if these can be used for startups, existing businesses to grow or expand. There's a wide use of acceptable uses of funds for these programs. The SBA works with the lenders to implement and then to guarantee the loans. Something that's interesting is that for all 7A and 504 loans, the SBA is providing 6 months of principal, interest, and SBA fee payments. So if you're an existing 7A loan recipient or you're thinking about getting a 7A or a 504 loan, this would apply to you, and there's no application necessary. It should be happening direct with the lender, and if you have questions or you're not seeing those payments being made on your behalf, you can reach out to your lender. But it's, again, just meant to give a little bit of relief to small business owners so they don't have to worry about those payments at this time. The SBA Express Bridge Loan Program is also available. You must have had an existing relationship with an SBA Express lender. It's a certain type of lender qualification that we have. And again, if you do have an existing banking relationship and you're interested in this product, you can just talk to your lender and see if they are an SBA Express lender and if they can help you get it. But it's up to $25,000. The idea is you get it very quickly, and it might be able to be a bridge while you're waiting maybe for an idle loan or for other funding. Briefly about some of our partners and other assistance we can provide. I know you guys have a lot of questions and struggles beyond just this loan products, making recovery plans and kind of dealing with reopening, bringing your businesses back in this kind of new era that we're in. So I just want to make sure everybody knows that you're not alone in these struggles, and there's a lot of resource partners available to help walk you through some of those individual one-on-one issues. And helping you apply for the loans as well, reconstructing financial records, preparing your statements, and then submitting the applications. So we have a whole network of small business development centers across the state. We have SCORE chapters. We have one located in downtown Chicago, and then we have a North Cook and Lake County SCORE chapter as well. The Women's Business Development Center, our Veterans Business Outreach Center is based in Wisconsin, but they cover the state of Illinois. And then they're all doing virtual meetings right now. So don't feel, you can certainly start on the phone or by computer with any of these and get some assistance. And then your local chambers as well are always there for you. And of course, the city of Chicago has that great system of small business navigators. So please lean on them as well. And if you go to our website, sba.gov/local assistance, we have a zip code lookup tool, and you can input your location and it'll tell you the resource partners that are nearest to you. So that'll help you get started. So we'll leave this up as we take our questions, but I just want to highlight some of the other places you can go to get information. SBA.gov/Paycheck Protection walks you through that program, including our lender finder tool, which again, if you don't have a lender, you don't know where to start, you can put your zip code in, they'll tell you about the loans nearby. You can just go to SBA.gov/coronavirus as well. That will bring up all of our coronavirus support and loan program information. Our local Illinois district office, you can see us online at sba.gov/il. And then sending us an email is actually the quickest way to get a response. We're able to route the email to the right person. So if we don't get to your question today or we don't have an answer today, feel free to email us at illinois.do@sba.gov. And again, we'll be able to route that and get you a response. A note I do want to make, at the district level, we're not able to see inside the disaster loan portal. We can't really give you an update on where your disaster loan is. That's separate from our district office operations. So you're going to need to call the Disaster Customer Service Center. There's an 800 number on the screen. They also have an email address. They have extended hours, so you don't feel that you have to call during business hours. You can call on weekends, you can call in evenings, and you might get a response quicker if you're calling kind of in an off-hour time. And yeah, that's sort of the best place to go if you have if you have a pending application and you need help with the next step on that, you're going to need to call that Disaster Customer Service Center. So with that, I think I'll leave that screen up, but we can go ahead and take some of our questions now.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jessica, for that more in-depth information about SBA resources. I did have some questions come in to me directly as the host, so I will read those to you. If you are asking questions, please use the chat box, not the Q&A, the chat box, and make sure you're sending your question to all attendees so Jessica and I can look at the questions. And with that, let me see what came in. First and foremost, will we get slides from this presentation or a recording? I do want to say this webinar is being recorded. Hopefully, possibly, we may be able to share it on our YouTube account. However, all the information that Jessica just went over is actually available on their website, which is the slide currently up? And if you do have any more specific questions, the phone number and email address is listed on this slide as well. So that would be my first suggestion if you need more one-on-one assistance and want to reference some of the information. It is all available online. Did I miss anything, Jessica? Am I correct with that?
Yes, perfect. That's exactly right.
Okay, good. So first question, what if the PPP loan was a low amount and 100% went to payroll? If forgiven, can an employer reapply?
Yeah, so unfortunately, no. Everyone gets kind of one bite at the pie with PPP. And so yeah, short answer is one loan per borrower. Even if you spend it all appropriately, that's your PPP right there.
How many hours is needed to be considered a full-time employee?
So they go with 40 on this. That's what we're using. 40 hours is your FTE equivalent.
Okay. Can we use to pay our credit cards?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like in general, I'm gonna say no. I would need to know more about what kind of expenses you were putting on the credit card. If you were sole proprietor, again, this is really it's meant to replace wages. So yeah, I'll just say you should probably follow up and we can talk more about your specific uses.
If a small business like a home daycare is granted a IDL loan, are they able to also utilize it for equipment and business expenses needed to comply with government COVID-19 guidelines and regulations? Is it only for expenses incurred during the COVID crisis, or also those seen in years moving forward during the 30-year repayment term?
That's interesting. Carol, are you muted, Carol? Can you talk a little bit about how long people have to spend their idle loan?
I will unmute. Oh, there it is.
Okay, so I'm unmuted and was actually answering a question, so I didn't fully hear the question. It didn't register with me. Could you repeat it, please?
Interesting. Yeah, so I in general, they're asking, can you use your idle loan to pay for equipment related to COVID-19, which I think that would be an acceptable use of an idle loan if you needed to buy masks or cleaning equipment or something to make your business, you can run it again. But they were kind of asking, do you need to spend your idle loan during this current period of the pandemic, or do you have time in future years to spend the money while you're repaying it over 30 years?
This is just general. Usually use of proceeds takes place within a year on most loans, okay? But this is a direct loan, not a guaranteed loan. So I was referring to guaranteed loans as far as use of proceeds. So the thought would be that could proceeds be used for protective equipment? I'm assuming that they could be, as long as that's a part of the normal operations of the business. And keep in mind, nothing is normal now.
Yeah. So
Okay.
we can follow up if that questioner wants to send us an email to illinois.do, or if they want to call that disaster customer service center. We can figure out how long you would have to spend your idle loan. But again, just to be clear, this is not a forgivable loan like the PPP. So you're going to be paying that idle back no matter whatever the answer is to that question.
Mm-hmm. Can you explain the idle loan process? Once you've been approved, when will you receive the money?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we don't have a lot of good information about timelines right now for funds disbursement. This program has been sort of overwhelmed by demand. There are just way more applications than typically how this program has been used was connected to physical disasters, and that really in a concentrated geographic area. So a tornado hits or flooding strikes a certain county, and those were the businesses that would apply for disaster loans. The idea of a disaster hitting every small business in the country simultaneously was really unprecedented for this program. So I just want to kind of give a little context to why some people have experienced long wait times in getting these loans. But all that to say, the idle advance does come through relatively quickly if you qualify for that. That's usually a direct deposit in your account. You provide some account information when you apply, and then you'll kind of see that money show up. And then with the loan itself, you'll receive a notification via email when it's if underwriters need more documentation from you or if there's a loan offer being made. So again, I don't want to set anyone's expectations. Definitely, I know there's some probably idle applicants on the line who have been waiting a long time to get their idle loans. So I'll just ask everyone to please be patient. And again, if you haven't already applied for a PPP, to consider that program as well if it's appropriate for your small business.
Okay. For the advanced 10K grant, to assure forgiveness, is there anything the person should do to make sure it's forgiven? You briefly talked about documentation, if employees leave, anything else specifically?
Yeah, so you don't need to apply for forgiveness for that advance up to $10,000 grant. That money just comes to you, and there are acceptable uses. I'm not just going to say you can use it on anything. Basically, the same uses around the idle and the PPP program are acceptable uses, but you don't have to apply for forgiveness after you receive the idle advance. Again, to reiterate, if you also receive a PPP and then later you apply for forgiveness on the PPP, your idle advance amount could be deducted from your PPP forgiveness total. But if you say you never get a PPP, you just apply for an idle and an idle advance, then those are just the two programs you work through. Your idle advance is a grant, and then your idle is a loan that you have to repay.
We have all asking documents. Was wondering, do your taxes have to be current for the PPP?
Can you take this one, Carol? I know for a while we were saying that you didn't need to have your 2019 taxes done, but I know for sole proprietors, you do have to show that you had an income last year. Is that correct?
That is correct. And it had been that as people filed their 2019 taxes, that information and those forms were used related to the PPP and also in some cases the EIDL. So the thought would be we want to encourage small business owners to file their taxes, personal and corporate, sole proprietor, any other forms as soon as possible. The tax returns lots of times are the basis for some of the calculations, especially if you're a sole proprietor and you have to make tax deposits.
Thank you.
The PPP program is via a lender. Do we apply through the SBA for the idle loan?
Yes. So thank you for clarifying that. That's exactly right. So PPP through a lender, you apply through the lender. Idle, the money comes from the SBA in the Treasury. So you make direct application through the SBA for the idle loan.
Someone asked, to be clear, businesses now have 24 weeks to spend PPP funds instead of 8 weeks. Is this correct?
That is correct. That was a change that was in the PPP Flexibility Act. So yes, 24 weeks upon disbursement to spend in acceptable time uses.
I believe you already touched on this, but can you explain the payoff/forgiveness if you have PPP and idle?
Yeah. So I don't think I touched on this in the presentation, but you can apply for both programs. There's another question here that I'll address at the same time. How should Chicago businesses ensure they avoid duplication of benefits when seeking small business relief? State of Illinois Business Interruption Grant Program, federal SBA programs, and local programs present a complex funding environment for small business banks. And he's absolutely right. And so there are a lot of programs right now, and it's tough to keep them straight. So I definitely understand that struggle and that confusion. And hopefully all these webinars are helping you guys kind of get everything organized. But to the original point, you can receive funds from a lot of these programs simultaneously. For the PPP and the Idle, if you're using them on different purposes, then it's acceptable to receive loans from both programs. And I don't know, I can't speak to the details of every state of Illinois program or every city of Chicago loan program, but in general, receiving loans from the SBA does not preclude you from applying for these other loan programs as well, to my knowledge. So again, do your research. It's on you, and you want to make sure that you're following all the guidelines, but especially if you're using the funds in the appropriate way, you can definitely take advantage of more than one program. That said, if you receive an Idle loan and you receive a PPP loan and you're using them for different purposes and it's documented, that's okay. If you also receive an Idle advance, that up to $10,000 grant that comes through your direct deposit, at the end of your PPP covered period, when you're applying for forgiveness, they'll ask you, did you also receive that advance? And that advance is deducted from your total. So if you received a loan of $100,000, you used it 60% on payroll, the whole loan qualifies for forgiveness, and say you received a $3,000 Idle advance, you would have $97,000 forgiven because you received that $3,000 at the top of the process. So again, when you are ready to apply for forgiveness, there's a worksheet you walk through and it asks you all these questions and you kind of do the math and see where you end up forgiveness wise. But that's basically how the Idle advance interacts with the PPP program.
This one's a good question. If I don't have a business account, can I still get a loan with either loan request?
Carol, can you talk to a bit about how, I'm assuming this is like a sole proprietor situation and they kind of let their business expenses commingle with their personal?
Okay, so with EIDL, my understanding is if no, first I want to start with the P3 program, with the Payroll Protection Program. My understanding is that there may be some 1099ers that are sole proprietors. And if that is the case and you're actually working with a bank, I have not heard that there's a requirement specifically for a business account if you are a sole proprietor. Most banks and lenders will look for you to have a business account, but my understanding is that you can be a sole proprietor and receive P3 loan proceeds, and you may not have a business account. On the EIDL side, I don't have a specific answer related to if they're checking to see if for account deposits, it can only be very specifically if it can only be related to if you have a business account. I do not know.
So we can try and circle back on that if they want to follow up with either illinois.do@sba.gov or the disaster customer service at sba.gov.
Oh, this person said that they are a taxi owner.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely follow up with the contact information on this slide. If Idle advance is forgivable and PPP is forgivable, are both loans forgivable but separate, or will there be a forgiveness reduction?
Yeah, so again, that Idle advance, it's not really a forgivable loan. It's more of an advance on the loan. So it's just a grant. And again, say you don't even get the PPP, but you get the Idle advance, you just get it. You don't have to apply for forgiveness on that Idle advance. But if you do have both, your PPP will be reduced by the amount of the advance. Your forgiveness total will be reduced by the amount of the advance, not the loan that you receive.
Question came in. I received the PPP loan and I used some of the money for a paycheck that dated prior to receiving the loan. Was that appropriate?
So I didn't get into this in the presentation because it's a little complicated, but you do have sort of a covered period. And so say you had employees who did work prior to when you received the loan, but then you paid them after you received the loan. So that pay period applied before the loan, that's acceptable. There's a couple different ways you can choose that 24-week period. You can kind of adjust it to align with your pay periods, or you can have it turn on the day the loan is received and then run for 24 weeks after that. So again, it varies by what is the best decision will vary by your business circumstances, and it's there'd be no way for me to explain all the possible computations in this presentation. So the short answer is payments made during the covered period for work that was performed immediately prior to when the loan is received, that would be acceptable. But beyond that, I don't want to provide any further guidance. We could talk to you one-on-one about it.
Mm-hmm. A couple questions are coming in about the loan amounts. One person said, I received the full 10K idle, then a follow-up email approved for a low 2,500 SBA loan. Is there a request for a higher amount? And then another person asked, can I get an increase of what is offered? So just if you could go into a little bit on how the decisions are made for the amounts.
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea behind the advance, that first chunk of money that you receive, that is based on the number of employees that you have up to $10,000. So I think some people thought, oh, that's a straight 10,000 for everyone, and that's not how that is being distributed. It is based on number of employees. So that's how the first part is calculated. The second part, the idle loan itself, that you guys have seen, I'm sure, when you were applying, there is not a space on the application where you put, I want X amount of dollars. That's just not how the program works. Based on your sales in the past and your projections of how the loss has affected you, that's how the loan processors determine what they're going to offer you for that loan. That said, as I did mention, unprecedented demand in this program, there have been limits placed on the amount of on what is being offered to people, basically. And I don't have information on what those limits necessarily are or who they're applying to, but all that to say, the SBA is just doing its best to distribute as much money as possible to as many small businesses as possible. So the total might be smaller than what some businesses are expecting. There is a process for the disaster loans. And again, this applies not just to COVID-19 impacted businesses, but any type of disaster loan where you can appeal for more money, especially if your circumstances have changed from when you made the disaster loan application. You would have to reach out to the Disaster Customer Service Center to get more information on how you would share that new information or what channels you would go through to apply for more funding if you feel like you have new information that you didn't include in your loan application. But I just want to include the caveat that a lot of people are feeling that their loan is smaller than they were expecting, and that's because the SBA is just trying to stretch the dollars right now. And don't forget about the PPP if you haven't applied for the PPP, because that, as I showed, we do have funds left in that pool. And I just want to make sure that if you do need money for wages, that you know that that's still available up till Tuesday.
Mm-hmm. Another good question is, does IDLE help with recent protest damage to businesses?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. And again, if this if this were a 3-day presentation, I could have gotten into that. I did want to focus on the COVID-19 programs today, especially with that deadline coming up on Tuesday. But short answer is yes. The state of Illinois has received the necessary disaster declaration. It doesn't apply to every county in the state. It's basically Cook County and surrounding counties. But this is more wide-ranging than the economic injury that's associated with the COVID-19 disaster declaration. This the civil unrest disaster declaration includes small businesses and homeowners and renters who experience physical damages. So if your business or home was damaged in some way during a specified time period, the dates are going to be included in the disaster declaration, but you would qualify for a low interest loan to help you make those repairs and make you whole again. That we're still waiting for a little more guidance on that. So make sure you're subscribed to our emails and you kind of follow up with the SBA, because we will be promoting how you can apply for that. But for all of our disaster loans, you can start at sba.gov/disaster. And that is whether you're applying for a COVID-19 disaster loan or a civil unrest disaster loan. That's the landing page that you'll need to start on. But yes, hopefully we'll have more information this week, in the coming days, and we'll be able to share that with our network. But and we could definitely do a follow-up webinar as well, just focusing on that disaster loan opportunity, because again, I don't want people to be confused. There's already so many COVID-19 programs. I don't want to kind of introduce more information about another loan program that might not apply to everyone. So yeah, we'll follow up with more info on that.
Is there a newsletter that people can sign up for to get up-to-date information about these loans and what's going on?
Yeah, I don't know if I can maybe share the sign up link in the chat box here. Actually, let me off. Yeah, you can also go to sba.gov/il and there should be an email sign up box.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's the best way. And then we're also on Twitter at SBA_Illinois. That's another place you can.
You answered this question already, but can you just reiterate it one more time? We received both PPP and Idle loans and would like to reapply. Any possibility of that?
Yeah, so no. Basically, if you got your PPP, you're done with PPP. You get one loan. That's the guidance right now. Who knows? It'll change. But right now, the guidance is the PPP is ending next Tuesday, and everyone gets one, and or acceptable borrowers get one. And then for Idle, there is an opportunity to ask for an increase if you have new information, but with the caveat that we do know that loan amounts are being limited right now.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Sorry, 1 second. Is there a list of express bridge lenders?
I do not have that. I don't think that we certainly don't have that handy on our website. Again, because you need to have an existing relationship with them, I would just follow up with your lender that you do have an existing relationship with and see if they participate in this program.
Mm-hmm. Could Idle be used to pay 1099 contractors?
That's a good question. I think so. Carol, is the answer yes in your estimation?
Hi. Okay, so on the PPP side, I think I responded to someone to say that they have the opportunity themselves to make applications. So on the PPP side, no.
Right.
On the Idle side, what it's looked at and it's considered to be expenses that are paid, okay, and perhaps those expenses are related to some type of compensation that may be paid for staff. So my understanding is that 1099ers, I think that they could be, but I'm not absolutely certain. So it's probably a circle back again.
Yeah.
Question, if we use 40%, but not all 60% for payroll, will that 40% be forgiven?
Right. So again, there are certain, everyone's a little different. And so I don't want to, you do need to sit down and work through that worksheet or go to one of our resource partners and walk through. But in general, let's say you used 40% for payroll, 60% were in those other acceptable use categories. The forgiven amount would be 40% for payroll, 40% in those other acceptable categories, and then 20% would be, the amount that would be the term loan. So, but again, if you had headcount that went down or you had your wages change in some way, that's going to affect that percentage as well. So you do kind of have to walk through the whole forgiveness application to get the best answer.
Can you explain a little bit more about and I think this is a typo, IUND of the loan of the forgiven for employees with more than 100K a year?
Yeah, so again, we didn't touch on that in the presentation, but that is the amount that maxes out in terms of compensation for all employees. Basically, if someone gets paid more than $100,000 a year, you can only pay them the equivalent of what they would make in the covered period, whether you elect for an 8-week covered period or the 24-week covered period. Something to note, though, if you are going from the 8 to the 24 weeks, is that owner compensation is handled a little differently. And again, it's really the way it might affect businesses would be different from business to business. So I don't want to make anything sweeping right now. But, the idea being you now have 24 weeks to pay your employees. So you would be giving more money to them than you would if you only had 8 weeks to pay them. But with owner compensation, you won't be spending that as much as you would on the employees.
Right.
And again, just encourage you to check out those forgiveness instructions, because it does kind of explain where you max out on the amount per employee and then for your owner compensation.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Jessica. I do see a few questions coming in that are very, very specific and individualized. So I do want to recommend that for those kind of questions, you reach out to the SBA, the information. Jessica, if you don't mind, can you type it in the chat box to all attendees, the email address and phone number that you can contact if they have these very individualized questions?
Yeah.
And I believe that covers it. We try to do our best in giving more of an overview with a little bit of in-depth. And once again, all this information is available on the SBA website. So it is there for you to review. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to the SBA. BACP, we do offer resources. Briefly, we talked about chambers of commerce. We have resource navigators, and they are available for one-on-one consultations to assist you with pulling all your documents together, making sure your application looks good. So there are resources out there for businesses. Please visit chicago.gov/BACP. And once again, the SBA website for all the information about these loans. And definitely sign up for the newsletter. Those are really important information coming to you, almost, I want to say, first round, first information. So Jessica, any parting words?
No, just thank you so much for having us. Carol, thanks for your help as well with the Q&A. We're definitely here. If you need anything, don't hesitate to email. And then again, just one last reminder that if you haven't applied for that PPP, the deadline is on Tuesday. So make sure you start the process of finding a lender as soon as possible so you can get in the queue and get the money you need to help pay your employees.
Wonderful. All right. So that concludes the webinar. Jessica, just feel free to type in the chat box, the website, and how to sign up for the e-newsletters. And with that, thank you so much, everyone, for starting your Thursday morning with us. We hope this was very valuable information, and we wish everyone all the best. Have a good rest of your day, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, hold on just.